Hey YouTube, Robert here. Wanted to do this video on how not having a knife lanyard could change someone's life. So I have a story to go along with that. This is my custom knife that I had done, and I put this lanyard on it. So the story I'm going to tell, my son the Water Ninja didn't want me to tell this story. This incident happened about 2.5 years ago. He was 14, 17 now. So he's 14 and a half, whatever. And it was a pretty traumatic experience for him, even though he wasn't the one that got injured in this. Anyway, him and a friend were over at his friend's house. My son had brought his machete over. And winter time, so they were building a snow fort for the next weekend for them to have an airsoft battle, which is the guns that shoot the plastic pellets. And they play all summer and sometimes in the winter. So this just happened to be one of their winter wars they were having. So he brings the machete over, he had just sharpened it before taking it over, and they were building their course that they play on. And his friend had picked up the machete and jammed it into an ice mound, a hill that was ice. I'm assuming he thought it was softer or fresher than it was. And when he did that, the machete that they had didn't have a guard on it, and it didn't have a lanyard on it. So when he did that, and he was wearing gloves at the time, when he did that, anyway, his hand slid halfway down the blade. And this was a 12-inch machete, I believe, one of the military style machetes. And so anyway, slid about 6 or 8 inches down the blade and cut all his fingers. Didn't cut them off, but cut them down to the bone. He ended up severing the tendons, the ligaments, the nerves, everything in all 4 of his fingers. And my son was right there when it happened, saw it happen. They took the glove off, saw the damage, the injury to his hand, and fortunately there was plenty of snow around. They iced it, pretty much froze it, and ran to the house where somebody was there taking care of the kid's little sister, I believe, a babysitter. Drove him to the hospital. So when they got to the hospital, the parents weren't home. The hospital had called the parents, and the parents came down, found out what happened. The father of my son's friend called the sheriff, and the sheriff came down, interviewed him. The father wanted my son arrested or charged for the injury. The sheriff told him he wouldn't do that because it was an accident. There's nothing he could do, no charges he could file against my son. But the parents were upset, and the father was extremely upset about the event and what happened. So, the kid had to go through surgery that day, many surgeries after that. He also he was very athletic and potentially had a baseball career ahead of him. Kid played lacrosse and all that. And that's not going to happen without a lot of therapy. Even to this day, I understand the kid, he has function in his hand, but he has numbness. He can't feel things. He doesn't have the strength in his hand. So without a lot of hard work, who knows what's going to happen there. So obviously that changed his life by not having this little piece of cord and using it. How it changed my son's life, for one, the event itself was, scary, frightening. Um, Also, you know, tragic. And I don't believe he's ever seen anything like that to a human being. Having to deal with the parents at such a young age. And the other way it's affecting his life is we live in a small community here, and he has to look over his shoulder everywhere he goes because the father's still upset. The father has not gotten over um, this accident and blames my son 100% for it. And so, my son, now that he's driving, has to, when he's in town, he's got to be aware of who's at the store, who's at the bank, who's at the post office. Can't go. This guy has a business in town that deals with Western stuff, trailers and things, tack, and he can't go in there. The parents, when this happened, they forbid the kids to associate with each other. They weren't allowed to hang out anymore. Obviously, they see each other at school, but that's it. I mean, uh, until they're old enough, 18, to make up their own mind of what they do and where they go, without their parents' input, it's 3 years that he can't hang out with his buddy, his friend. His friend knows, that my son had nothing to do with it, but so he doesn't hold any grudges against him for it, doesn't blame him for it, but the parents do. The mother's kind of gotten over it. I guess my son has talked to her a couple times, but the father, like I said, still blames him for what happened. It was very costly to their family, for all these surgeries and stuff. And he threatened to sue me, but that didn't happen. It wasn't gonna happen. But like I said, my son, anytime he's in town, he's gotta, if this father is at the grocery store or at the gas station, he just can't go there. He has to. He avoids him because he's afraid of what the father's going to do. He just doesn't want that confrontation. And I have had a conversation with the father and know that if they ever do meet, there would be a confrontation between the two. And I don't think it's fair that that's something he should have to deal with, living in this town. Unfortunately, it is. So, it's changed his life. It's lost him a good friend. It's lost him the comfort of being, around town when there's a school event that they're both involved in. Both sets of families are there, and my son has to avoid any contact with his friend and his family. So just super, super unfortunate event, and all due to one, not having a guard on the knife, which machetes don't, and if they don't, then this little piece of rope here becomes very important at that, when your blade doesn't have a guard. This doesn't have a real good guard, which is one of the reasons I put the lanyard on there. So just because that blade didn't have a piece of rope to keep the kid's hand from sliding forward, created a tragic event, and for both kids, it's something neither one of them should have had to go through, especially at any age, but at 14, when they're in their beginning their high school careers, and hanging out and doing that and hanging out during the summer. That all ended, for both of them. And the sad thing is neither one of them blamed the other for any of it. And they, like I'm sure at school they hang out, they talk, they do whatever. But beyond that, that relationship, that friendship is over, other than like I said, being at school. So just, you know, a story I wanted to tell. Like I said, my son wouldn't let me tell it until recently. But how important these things can be, and how not having this could change someone's life. And I mean, even if it wasn't my son, his friend, it could be anybody. And imagine if you yourself were using a blade and your hand, you did that to your hand. As an adult, that could ruin your career for whatever you do, especially if you're using your hands in whatever field you're in, and rely on that. There's a lot of stories out there, tragic stories about people hurting their hands, but you know, something that can be avoided by implementing this piece of cord. You know, it just says a lot about the usefulness of a lanyard. Anyway, thanks for listening to the story. Thanks for watching the video. And yeah, just, you know, don't underestimate the value of this piece of cord. Thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you.